Hey, what's up everyone? Mike here, and this is the long-awaited BlissPop upgraded finally to Android 5.1 for the Nexus 6. Now you are going to see I am running a custom theme. It is Black Octopus. It is BlissPop Edition, completely compatible. So if you like this particular theme, I will include it in the description below so you can check it out and choose whether or not you want to use it or not. Now, this is the current update from 4.17. This is April 17th. It has a timestamp of 1856 or the build number. Now, there are some issues with this ROM right now with custom kernels, most specifically with Franco kernel. It's just not compatible whatsoever. Unfortunately, that is one of my favorite kernels, and it's just not workable at the moment. One of the secondary kernels that I do choose to use and has been very consistent and compatible with pretty much every build currently coming out of BlissPop is Elemental X. Another thing to mention with Elemental X is that it is going to have an aroma installer in the initial flash process. So you can choose whether or not you want to underclock, overclock, and you can choose some other specific information through that aroma installer. It's also worth noting that with Elemental X and BlissPop on the Nexus 6, you are going to get a rough average of about 30 minutes of screen on time per 10% battery drain. At least that's what I'm getting with my heavy usage. I am a heavy user, so with the math correct or mostly correct, you're going to get about 4 to 5 hours, maybe a little bit more from a 100 to 5% battery drain. So that's just a rough reference for Elemental X. You can choose to use whatever kernel you want. Be aware you might experience some boot loop issues or just incompatibility with BlissPop currently. It's just not very nice with some custom kernels for whatever reason. But hey, I warned you, and you can go and choose to figure out your own method. Now, with BlissPop, you are going to have a OTA update process, and it's pretty great and solid. It does work, and it will upgrade you or update you to the latest version or build number. Just be aware that you might not want to flash it right away, but it won't flash it right away. It will actually take you in TWRP, so you will have time to make backups before you flash the latest version. I also recommend that you go up here in the settings and actually set up your update check frequency. If you are running a version that is pretty stable for you and you're not experiencing too many issues, I would advise you to go anywhere from 3 days to a weekly update process. There's really no reason to update or flash every single time unless there is something fixed specifically for your needs or something you're finding that you're having problems with and they fix it. You can also check the changelog to check that specific feature set there or changes if you want to, so you can come in here and see what's going on and see if they fixed anything you're looking for. But another thing to mention is that it does have a dark theme and a light theme that you can choose from, and there are some specific notification settings that you can set in here so you can get the latest information. But that pretty much sums up the about menu there. Not too much going on. It is running the latest version as of this video. You are going to have some pretty great stuff here in your Bliss interface options. There are going to be some other feature sets and items that you're going to find throughout the menu here in sounds, display, and lights, and a couple other things. And I'll go over that, but for the most part, we're going to talk about Bliss interface. Everything for the most part that you are going to need is condensed in here, and my God, this thing is absolutely absurd with features. It has pretty much anything and everything you would want, although some things are still causing some issues, but I'm sure they'll get ironed out eventually. And then we'll probably get updated to Android 5.1.x, and then we'll have to go through it all over again. But that's the great thing about Android and just the fun thing about being challenged. But we'll go ahead and just go into status bar in the Bliss interface to start things off. Now, if you guys remember my Dark Cat ROM review, or if you watched it, if you have not, unfortunately, this might not make much sense to you. But with the Dark Cat ROM, you had the option to colorize or adjust the customization of colors throughout the entire ROM. And the same goes here with BlissPop 3.1 running Android 5.1 for the Nexus 6. You can change the colors of everything in here, and it gets ridiculous. I mean, you can change the color of your clock, your icons, and the actual indicators within the icons of your up and download stream settings. I mean, it's just absurd. This ROM has everything, and it might become my daily driver once they iron out a lot of the issues. But let's go ahead and just dive in here. Enough of my rambling. Hopefully it is informational for you guys. If not, then I apologize. But you will have the option to disable your clock and date settings here. You can, of course, adjust the alignment from center to right or left. As I mentioned, you can colorize that if you want to. You have your typical AM and PMs, and you can choose whether or not you want to display the dates, and you can get pretty specific with that format. You come up here and do a reset, so it will go back to a reset setting and default setting, so you don't have to go and manually reset the entire thing every time. Now the battery options here are pretty nice. You do have a battery bar option alternative if you don't want to use the regular icon status. But with the battery status, you get your pretty typical features here. You will have your indicator and you will have your icon, portrait, landscape, circle, text, or you can hide it. You can also place the percentage values. Let's get rid of that. You can also place the percentage value inside the icon, next to the icon, or hide it a la stock. So pretty basic stuff there. You do have a charging animation speed. You can disable this. You can slow it, normalize it, or go super fast. Now with the circular indicator, you will have a circle dotted, and I like this feature. You can actually change it really specific from 0 to 10 on the dot length, or you can go into the dot interval, and go from 0 to 10 as well. So you can super customize that clock up there if you want to. You can also adjust the colors on the fill and the text within the percentage indicator. So really, really advanced stuff. If you don't want to use that, you can just go back to a standard circle, but it is completely customizable. If you hit the reset with this, you can go back to a stock Android white setting feature, or you can go to Bliss's little blue look, or you can just cancel it out and go back to your own setting. So great stuff there. Like I mentioned, you can use the battery bar if you want to over the icon. That will basically place this up on the status bar, the top of the nav bar, or the bottom of the nav bar if you are using the Lollipop nav bar. So that will be up to you whether or not you want to use the battery bar or the battery indicator. So you do have different options with this ROM, which is always great. You also have your super user indicator, your Bluetooth icon, and brightness control toggles. So if you want to choose those, you have that option there available. You also have really advanced features with the mobile and Wi-Fi network icons. You can go in here and actually toggle this on. It will basically put an indicator on your upload and download streams on your network activity, in your Wi-Fi or your actual LTE cellular network icons. And you can change the color values on these as well. It's going to give you all of your information there with your network icons or activity icons or airplane mode icons. Really, really crazy features. And you can also set this to a reset feature on Android or Bliss settings, or just cancel it altogether. So super customizable there. Same thing with your notification and system icons. You can go in here and change specific customized colors. You can get really, really detailed and oriented. You also have a network traffic controller, so you can see your upload incoming, download incoming, outgoing, or you can see both. You can also colorize this as well. So really, really great stuff there. And as I mentioned, you can just go and colorize or customize that any way you see necessary. In breathing notifications, you will have SMS, missed calls, and voicemail, all which are toggleable to breathing, which is some great features. You also have a Bliss logo. I don't find this very useful, and it's actually pretty buggy with a theme enabled, or at least that I have found with my themes. But you can change that up if you do use stock or just without a theme in general, if you want to display the Bliss logo. And that's just the status bar. We still have lots to go here. The navigation options, you can choose to set up your navigation bar in different feature sets. You can actually disable this. It's also worth noting that there is a quick toggle you can use, and you can enable the nav bar with that quick toggle tile as well. We'll go over that in a little bit. You do have buttons and layouts. You can change the priority there. You can change where the icons are located. You can actually add more pages if you want to, or you can go and use a more Samsung approach. You can change up those icons. You can also hit reset, so you can go back to the standard look and start over. Now you do have your navbar dimensions like most ROMs, but this will change a little bit. It will actually change it based on the portrait and landscape modes. Now I do want to mention that the landscape mode is a little bit buggy, and the back and recents is going to be a little bit bigger, or smaller than the home button for some reason. This will depend, however, on the theme that you are using, but just be aware of that. It's a little bit buggy, or more buggy than most ROMs. Hopefully that will be fixed in an update in the future, if it has not already. Now you can show the arrow keys while typing, and you have your enable navigation rings. Now if you enable the navigation rings, you will have to go back and go into your navigation ring targets and then edit this up. Now you will be able to choose specific actions or specific applications. We'll just go ahead and throw in Bacon Reader there, And we'll go ahead and throw in another application that I use quite often, which is Studio for YouTube. If I can find it, there we go. So once we have these applications, we just hit that checkbox and we're good to go. So once I go in here, I can choose whether or not I want to toggle those actions or those specific applications. You can also restore the defaults, so you just have your Google Now standard setting there. So really great features here. You also have your left-handed mode, so if you are in landscape orientation, you can go from right to left or vice versa depending on your hand usage. You also have a recent long press action, which will just go back to your last app used. It is worth noting that double tap to sleep will work with the nav bar, so if you want to double tap on the nav bar to sleep your device, that is toggleable. You also have a navigation button tint, so if you want to colorize your nav bar icons, you can choose to do that. However, with some themes, it comes off a little bit ugly or weird, and it just over bleeds, for a better word. That will change based on your theme, but you can choose to use that as well if you want to match up your theme even more. Now you can end the call with the power button if you want to. You can also answer a call with the volume keys. You can use it to wake your device, or you can use the volume rockers to use playback or seek music toggles or settings through the music player you are using. You can also choose to reorient or invert the volume rockers when in landscape mode if you so want to. And that's a great feature. I actually use that all the time. Now in the recent options, you're going to get some pretty great stuff here. You will have a memory bar, and this is going to place a status up here at the top, so you will see how much free RAM you currently have right up here at the top. You can also choose whether or not you want to show that search bar, the Google search bar up there, and you can always enable your clear all recents, which can be placed anywhere on the screen with your location setting. You also have an Omni switch, so you can go in here and toggle this on and go through your Omni switch settings. There's a lot of different options here to choose from if you want to use that Omni switch, which is mostly going to be pulled in from the side here with your basic tutorial. So you can do some specific applications or settings or actions and toggleable things. I don't really necessarily use that, but it is featured in here and you can use it if you want to. You are going to have your notification drawer, and in here you can customize pretty much anything as well. You are going to have your status bar header. You can show the weather here, so that's normally going to be placed right below your user or login information. You can change the text and icon colors accordingly to that, and you can also reset it to an Android or BlissPop standard. I don't really use that, but you can choose to use that if you want to. That is a personal preference as always. Quick pull down is based on right or left, or you can disable that. That's basically your quick toggle setting there to get your toggles rather quickly. Smart pull down, pretty standard stuff. You can do dismissible, persistent, or you can choose to do both. Now you can change up your order tiles and you can change your toggles in here. You can go in here and prioritize this based on your settings. You can obviously remove and add more, and there is a ridiculous selection and amount of quick toggles in here. I mean, that is just ridiculous, the amount that they include. Some are actually a little bit buggy and do not actually do anything currently, and some are actually working. So go in there and test those out. They'll probably be improved in future builds, but for the most part, everything is working. There are a couple things that are just buggy, so be aware of that. Now you will have 3 tiles per row, or 2 main tiles on the first row there, your enlarged first row. Be aware that if you choose to disable this, you will or may not lose your detailed settings, but they are down here at the bottom. So just choose to enable these back on, so you will get those. You will have your location, advanced settings, and your detailed Wi-Fi view. So if you don't have the highlighted settings and you still want to get your detailed information, you can toggle those on. So that is always great to have that quick access features. If you disable these toggles with the highlight feature enabled or disabled, they will just become standard on and off toggles. So be aware of that. You can also choose to auto close the panel. So once you toggle something like, let's say, the flashlight, it will automatically close your toggle or your quick toggle. So just be aware of that. That's what that is for. And you can enable the force expanded notification if your application supports that feature. As I mentioned, you can custom pretty much color anything you want, and that does not go and end here. You can go in here and custom color your switch or your shade alphas. You can go in here and change your background colors as well as your icon and text. So you can get super crazy with the colors in here. And as I mentioned, you can set this based on Android or BlissPop default resets. So that is some crazy stuff. We're not even close to finished. You do have your heads up, and in here you have your basic stuff. You can change your timeout to never from 2 to 10 seconds. You can blacklist or add do not disturb apps. You can change your outside touch behaviors. You have a toggle there for that. In your lock screen options, you have a lot of different stuff here. You can long press that lock icon to place your device back to sleep if you want to, instead of waiting automatically. You will have middle shortcuts, and with this you can actually place shortcuts on the middle of your lock screen. So you can go in here and change your application values, and you can choose whether or not you want to have specific applications toggleable or executable from your lock screen. Ones that I really like are some that are really useful, like Gmail or your FX File Explorer or things of that nature. So you are going to say, I currently just have Bacon Reader and Gmail. I don't have it set up currently, but that is a very cool option on your lock screen shortcuts. You also have your typical bottom shortcuts. This is going to be your phone and your actual camera. Those are defaults. You know, you can turn these off completely if you're having issues with those going off in your pocket like I do all the time, or you can choose to use specific applications or actions, and you can toggle those and reset those values accordingly. So some great stuff there with your lock screen and your bottom corner targets. You can also set a weather if you want to, so you can actually show the weather in your lock screen. There is a lot of customization here with your location, timestamps. You can choose to change up the icons as well with a monochrome, colored, or V-clouds. Pretty standard stuff there, and you can colorize your icons if you want to go and change those values. Everything is going to be included with the reset here as well with Android or Bliss default values. I don't use those, but you can choose to use if you want to, and this is where you're going to colorize or custom your colors in here with text and icons. So if you change that up, be sure you go into colors and customize your colors accordingly. Clock widget settings are currently a little bit buggy, and it does force close, so be aware of that. It may depend on the kernel you're using, but with Elemental X and the default kernel that is included, I found this a little bit buggy. So be aware of that. If you click on that, it might close or crash your settings menu. Now, you can display a music visualizer in your lock screen as well. So if you are listening to music and you are in your lock screen, it will place a nice little visualizer down at the bottom to show you some visual effects and eye candy. I actually leave that enabled. It takes up a little bit of memory, but it's pretty cool to have that feature. In the power menu settings here, this is where you're going to have your advanced power. Your reboot is going to be automatically toggleable. It does come already enabled through the developer settings, but you can go and choose whether or not you want to disable that for whatever means. Now, you will have a one-click reboot if you want to go that route. Just be aware that that will actually just reboot your device, so you won't have your advanced reboot settings if you choose to use that. You can also toggle on your screenshots and a lot of different other options here with screen records, profile switchers. You have your standard airplane mode, user switcher, setting shortcuts, device lockdown, bug reports, and your sound panel. Now, while we're in the sound panel real quickly, I am going to mention that you can change your sound panel, and I'll go over this a little bit later. You can actually change the delay or the timeout on the panel. The standard default is about 3 seconds, and I have mine set up for 5. So you can choose to actually display that panel for a little bit longer. And another cool feature is it does have 3 different settings here in your actual toggleable video audible, excuse me. So you don't have to necessarily go into a priority mode unless you want to completely disable notifications coming in or things of that nature. What I mean by this is you can toggle on your audible sound, you can go into a vibrate, or you can go into a complete silent mode with this specific ROM. So that is very nice that you can actually go into a complete silent mode, and that is becoming more apparent in most of the CM-based ROMs or themes, and that is great. I hope it actually comes to AOSP, if it has not already, very, very soon, and at least stock Android would be pretty nice as well. You do have gesture anywhere, and in here you can get that pretty cool little gesture-like feature. So if I toggle something like a C for calendar or clock, or my calculator, it will toggle that application, and I can go in here and choose this on the fly. I can also drag this around the screen and place it anywhere I want, or I can choose to close it out right there with the X. Now, you can change your trigger region here. You can change the width of the trigger, the position, or the height. So you can go in here and change all that. You can change this on left or right specifically. So if you want to toggle this on, you can use that. You can add more gestures and more applications based on those gestures within that setting menu there. So some pretty great stuff with that. I don't really use it, but you can choose to use that if you want to. As always, you are going to have an app circle bar as well, but be aware that this is only toggleable on the right side. So if you choose to toggle the other application that I just mentioned, the gestures on the right, you might have some interference unless you toggle the trigger based on the top for one specific and the bottom for one specific. So as long as you have the toggle or the trigger value separate from each other, you won't have any issues. But if it overlaps each other, you might have some issues. So just be aware of that. And you obviously have the trigger width, position, and heights that you can set up, and you can change which apps are shown within this drawer. So I'll just go ahead and toggle a couple quick ones here. And once you trigger this, you'll be able to select which applications you want to go into within that wheelhouse. So it's a pretty cool little feature. I don't necessarily use it, but hey, you can choose to use that as well. You will have your animations in here as well, and you can choose your IME, Toast, List View, or System Animation, so you can get really specific here and change everything according to what you specifically want preference-wise. That's always cool to have. You also can change your scrolling cache and your scrolling modifiers, so you can get really, really specific with your Android system animations. Bliss downloads, pretty typical stuff. You're going to get your BlissPop official nightly builds. There's really nothing useful in here per se with the Nexus 6 device. I'd rather you stick to the about and just get your OTA process through there and check your change logs accordingly. Everything else can be found on the XDA forum, so I really don't recommend you use Bliss downloads. It's not going to get you very far. It might actually confuse you a little bit because some stuff is actually not compatible with the Nexus 6 in there and what have you. Now you will have your typical equalizer included in here. You can toggle this on. It's actually included or enabled by default. I recommend you turn it off because sometimes I get some issues with calls with the speaker setting, but you can go in here and toggle this on if you want to and play with it according to your preference. It is included. Themes are always included with CM-based ROMs, and this is no different. You are going to have the option to theme out your device or your actual system settings. I use Black Octopus, like I mentioned earlier. It's free on XDA or premium through Google Play Store, and I'll include the link in the description below. Another one that is my favorite is Coilfield. This is a premium, however, and Deep Darkness is really great for BlissPop specifically, as well as Nicholas's Dark Material theme. So pretty much all the themes in here, minus Coilfield, are relatively specific for the BlissPop ROM. So they are additions entirely specific for BlissPop. So you might want to check those out. I definitely recommend them. Nicholas's Dark Material is actually a complete black theme, and it is actually very well done. I just didn't use it for the purpose of this review for whatever reason. In your sounds menu, you will have some advanced features as well. You can link your ring and notification volumes here, no different than most CM-based themes. However, they did include volume steps, which is really, really great. So you can actually change your volume steps if you want to get real specific based on the values and settings here. So some great features there. You do have the volume panel timeout, and this is what I mentioned earlier. You can actually go from the default, which is 3 seconds, that will be displayed on your screen with that panel right there. Or you can go into a longer setting like 5 seconds, which I actually like because sometimes I like to mess around with my toggles and that just goes, and fades away a little bit too quickly for my taste. But as I mentioned, you will have your audible toggle here. You will have audible, vibrate, and a complete silent mode without going into priority settings. So that is super awesome. And you will have the option to choose your panels and you can get real specific with your notification and settings there with your sound panels. You do have some extra phone ringtones and notification tones that are included, and if you install themes, you will get those through there as well if you don't want to access those through the theme process. You also have increasing ring volumes if you want to start and do a ramp up time for whatever reason. That is available. You can also launch a music app or a default music app when the headset is plugged in, so that's a cool little feature. You have your standard other sounds here with your additional vibrate and notification sound toggles. You can also enable charging sounds if you want to when you connect or disconnect a charging USB cable or micro USB cable. Now you are going to have advanced options included with this ROM, and that is super awesome. So you can disable those annoying camera shutter sounds if you want to get super sneaky, spy mode, and take some shots without people noticing you taking shots. That's with the screenshot sound as well if you don't want to have that annoying sound when you're taking screenshot sounds. And the volume headset, safe headset volume warning, it can be disabled as well. You can also set up your less frequent notification sounds based on default behavior, 3 to 5 minutes, or 3 seconds to 5 minutes rather. And you have your media control based on those volume keys, volume keys. So you have some advanced options there. Now it is worth noting that if you are going to use the standard default included kernel, you will have a vibrate intensity controller, and you can base that on a percentage value. Now if you install a custom kernel like Elemental X or anything else, it will be taken away unfortunately, but you do have options to turn on vibrate for calls or vibrate on touch. So those toggles are there and available, and that's all found within your settings or sound menu. Display and lights, you're going to have some great stuff in here. You are going to have a smart cover feature. So if you have a smart cover and it has a magnet, you will be able to choose whether or not you want to turn the screen off when the lid closes or when the lid opens. So you can control those based on those values with the smart cover. You also have live display, and this is actually fully functional with Elemental X. It's probably functional with some other kernels, as well. Although I did find it completely compatible with Elemental X and the default kernel. I like to keep my day and night at 7,000 and 6,500. You can go in here and change up your display modes within this panel itself, or you can actually use a quick toggle that is included in the tiles. You can add that if you want to get real specific. So that's great stuff. You can also use automatic outdoor mode, and you can go into color calibration if you want to get into some super advanced settings. Now you can go into ambient display, and you will have some advanced settings. If you use this specifically, you can do an overwrite value, and you can go in here and change your fade in, fade out, and visible durations if you use ambient display. So great stuff there if you don't want to use LED notifications, which are included. Now you do have double tap to wake and double tap to sleep toggles based on the status bar. Just remember that you do have double tap to sleep on the navigation bar as well if you want to toggle that if you are using a navigation bar. The sleep function is going to have the extra 45 seconds included if you want to have that. Some ROMs don't have that, and I like that sweet spot between 30 seconds and 1 minute. As I mentioned, you can make this a quick toggle as well for your SOT, or your screen timeout rather. So that's a cool quick toggle that you can include. Expanded desktop is included with this particular ROM, which is a nice feature for those that like full screen mode. You do have a wake on plug, so that can be toggled on or off as well. You do have advanced display settings, which is going to have your LCD density, your DPI changer. You can go from 420 DPI all the way to 616, the default being 560, or you can go to a custom value and change that up specifically. Just be aware that it will require a reboot to take effect. Most of you know that. Now, Elemental X is completely compatible with the LED lights. It will work with the battery lights. So if you enable this during charging, or you disable it, it will be fully functional with the Elemental X kernel or the default kernel that is included with BlissPop. Notification lights, pretty standard stuff here. You can change up your color values on that. You can add custom values, and you can add custom applications and change the colors of the notification LED based on that information there. That pretty much sums up display and lights. Everything else is pretty standard. You do have Notification Manager, and you can go in here and change up some specific notification access and settings. Lock screen has your smart lock, which is somewhat usable. I don't know if it is, in fact, completely resolved yet, but you can go in here and change up your trusted places based on GPS settings if you have that enabled. So smart lock's always great. You also have some pretty advanced features here with 3x3, 4x4, 5x5, and I think all the way up to 6x6 on the pattern lock. Just be aware that if you are going to enable a pattern lock and you are using TWRP with BlissPop currently, if you go into TWRP, sometimes you won't be able to access TWRP without the pattern password. So you might have to enter password in your pin lock, or if you are using a pin lock, I would prefer you use a pin lock or a code, as you can enter that in TWRP and not be restricted. That may be a little bit confusing, so you can just skip what I said there and it won't be so confusing. Now, there are some other things in lock screen, like I mentioned, that are condensed in the other menus. You have your display music visualizer that you can enable in here as well as your lock screen shortcuts, but that is all condensed in the regular Bliss interface menu, so don't worry about that too much. You do have your standard security features here. You can encrypt your phone if you want to. I already have mine encrypted. You can also set up a SIM and RUIM card lock. All the settings are in here if you want to choose those. Pretty basic stuff. Screen pinning, everything else is included. You do have your system profiles, as I mentioned, so if you want to toggle this on based on your power menu, you can go in here and set up those based on your location settings, and you can change your toggles accordingly. But that pretty much sums it up, guys. Everything else is pretty much standard. You do have your Super SU there that you can click on rather quickly. Your performance settings, if you are using the default kernel, you can come in here and change these values. And you do have your developer options. One thing to mention is that there is an ad blocker in your advanced settings or your developer options if you want to go that route without using ad away or anything like that. So you do have an ad blocker included. You can come in here and enable that. Just make sure you update your host files if you enable this, and you do have a wake lock blocker included as well. You can turn this on and disable whatever certain service is keeping your device awake if you find that with better battery stats or whatever application you use. You do have your advanced reboot toggle here as well if you want to go and turn that off for whatever reason, as it is turned on by default. And all the way here at the bottom, you do have your animation scales, which you can go all the way down to 2.5x. But yeah, that pretty much sums up BlissPop 5.1 or BlissPop 3.1 running Android 5.1 on the Nexus 6. I hope you guys found this enjoyable. I hope it was informative and it was went over and covered everything that you had. If you have any questions that I missed, which I don't know if I could have missed anything, but you can leave all those questions in the comment section below. I will try to include everything in the descriptions in terms of themes and what I have discussed about this ROM in general in the description. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hit that thumbs up if you did. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you are looking forward to more videos like this in the future. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next video.